Welcome back to Hoosier Game Day, brought to you by the Hoosier Network. I'm Liv Clements, joined with me with Ryan as always. IU's now 4-0, beating Charlotte 52-14. Ryan, what did you see from that game that you liked?
Well, I mean, in the first quarter, it got up to a shaky start. Right. But once, the teams separated themselves, the Power 4 team separated itself from the G5 school, it was smooth sailing for IU. And I said it here on Friday, if Charlotte scores no more than 14 points, things will go to plan, and they did. So.
And they did.
Yeah.
And Cignetti said he was impressed so far with Rourke's action on the field with UCLA and now Charlotte. When you look at Rourke versus Charlotte, did you like what you saw from him? Was it still impressive?
I mean, absolutely. Everything that we've seen from Curtis Rourke so far has been amazing. And I know we said it last week. I mean, this show is basically Curtis Rourke game day. Yeah. Because when you have this highly regarded transfer, I don't care if he comes from the MAC, the Mountain West, from the SEC, wherever. He was put here to win. And that is exactly what he's done. And all credit goes to him. He might be making himself some money when it comes to the NFL draft, whether he's a, day 2 or 3 pick. Yep. But he is a fan favorite. You see everyone going behind him on social media, and he's getting national attention, whether that's ESPN, Pro Football Focus. He is doing his due diligence, and he is doing what he came here to do, and that is win.
Win. And IU has been winning. Offensively and defensively, they've been looking strong. Let's get into some of the top highlights from this past weekend. IU's offense came out hot, per usual, with a Tyson Lawton touchdown to get the Hoosier fans hyped. The Hoosiers ended the game with 510 yards, with 222 being rushing, and as you can see, it was working for the Hoosiers. And a 27-yard field goal is good, and IU gets up 10 early in the first quarter. But Cignetti likes the points on the board, but don't sleep on the 49ers. Straight through the middle, and they get on the board. A team coming off a 1-point win against Gardner-Webb last week. Rourke, with some pressure in the pocket, finds Texas Tech transfer Miles Price for the dime and moves the sticks for another first down. Now Rourke just showing off, finding his receiver Surratt to the Hoosiers in the red zone. Surratt's been so impressive this season, he has to be proud of himself. IU with another TD, finished the game with 29 first downs and 2 of 3 on 4th down. Charlotte responds right before the half with 7 more, making it a 3-point game. Yet, Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week Curtis Rourke said, let me show you something. He can pass, and he can run, and he gets his own touchdowns. And right before the half, finds Keyshawn Williams as the Hoosiers extend their lead into halftime. Right on it to Miles Price out of the half. Rourke finished the game 16 of 20 with 258 yards. Cignetti has been all around impressed with Rourke leading this offense out of Ohio University. IU put 7 more on the board, and it's just like they didn't stop. And in IU Mike Penix style versus Penn State, IU puts up 52 and holds the 49ers to just 14. And to end the game for the Hoosiers, a fumble caused by defensive leader Aiden Fisher, transfer from JMU with Cignetti. IU's defense held the 49ers to only 13 first downs and 1 for 3 on 4th down. Only winning 3 games last season, IU has already surpassed their total. IU stays undefeated, is now only 2 games away from being bowl eligible. Ryan, when you hear stats like that, does IU even have a weak point?
Well, I think, the competition level has been, not up to par to really test you've played Western Illinois, FIU, a bad UCLA team, and then Charlotte. So I think we may not know. There may be one cooking in the balance.
Okay.
But this week is going to be the week where we find one, if there is one.
Right.
So, and I think it could be the secondary with D'Angelo Pons, Sean Asbury, and I think that Maryland has the recipe to make the Hoosiers sweat a little bit when it comes to the secondary defense.
And like I said earlier, IU is now 4-0, and the only other team in the Big Ten that's 4-0 is Illinois. Should IU be considered for the top 25, if not in the top 25, if this continues against Maryland?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't play 5 games and win them all and not have at least 200 votes to be in in the poll. I mean, I feel like if Indiana were to win on Saturday, they would be around the 19 to 23 range where they would leave some room, the voters would leave some room for the G5s at the bottom at 24 and 25. But it is time to rank Indiana if they beat Maryland.
Okay, so if they beat Maryland, it's a conversation to be had.
It will be a sure thing. They will be ranked if they beat Maryland.
Okay, so let's get into our first guest, who we are going to break down the Big Ten. We're going to look into the teams and see where those rankings stand. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Hoosier Game Day. I'm here with Will Stewart, co-host for Pack the Rock podcast. And you've joined us before, but welcome back.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Happy to be back.
Yes. And I want to jump right in. So we're going to break down the Big Ten Conference. And when you see the Big Ten Conference having 6 teams still undefeated, Illinois, Indiana, both still 4-0, what can you say when people say Big Ten football?
It's a strong conference. I mean, it always has been. It's Power 4. It's the Premier League outside of the SEC. Obviously, SEC football is just different. But Big Ten football is still number 2, right? They're going to have those top teams. Ohio State, defending Natty champs in Michigan.
Yes.
You've got Oregon now. You've got USC football, who's still a top 25 team. Their only loss is to Michigan in what was a thrilling game. I mean, I don't know if you caught it, but that game was just insane to watch. The lack of passing yards, and Michigan still put up 27 in that last drive for 90 yards over like 10 minutes. But it's a strong conference, right? I mean, and then you've got the surprises in Indiana and Illinois.
Yep.
Illinois' got 2 ranked wins. Nobody thought this team was, I mean, it was going to be a stretch to make a bowl game this year. If you look at all the preseason predictions, nobody really thought Illinois would be what they'd be. And it's the same story for Indiana. Granted, Indiana's resume so far this season isn't as strong as Illinois'. They don't have those ranked wins. But they're coming, right? Nebraska's going to come to town, I would assume, still be ranked. They lost to Illinois at home in overtime, which is a tough loss. But, yeah, I don't think it's going to kill their rankings. Still, Michigan's on the schedule. Ohio State's on the schedule. Washington's on the schedule, who is still undefeated. So, I mean, there's time for Indiana to build that resume. But the team is – this conference is strong.
And so you say the conference is strong. It's just competitive. Yeah. Especially this year, it's just competitive. And when I name off these teams, keep them in mind – Illinois, Indiana, OSU, Oregon, Penn, Rutgers, all undefeated. Who do you see keeping that record the longest of being undefeated?
The longest is tough. It's because of week set. Well, first off, Illinois and Penn State are playing this week.
Right.
So there's one of them's already getting knocked off.
Coming up.
But week 7's tough because it's Ohio State, Oregon. And it's depending on who wins that game, really. Because Ohio State's, they're playing conference play. They got Iowa, and they're at home, though. So it's going to be a little bit easier. They got Michigan State. Michigan State's not in the caliber of beating OSU yet. They're getting better, but I don't think they're at that point. It's going to come down to that Oregon-OSU game, and it's who can come out of that. And it's in Eugene. So Ohio State's already cross-country. Oregon plays amazing at home, and they're dialing it up right now. They just smacked Oregon State 49-14. So I'm going to go with Oregon. I know people aren't as high on them as OSU, but I don't think OSU is going to travel well enough.
Okay, so you have Oregon maintaining that undefeated ranking the longest.
Yeah, for sure.
When you see IU in that mix in the Big Ten, should they be considered a Big Ten threat right now?
It's tough. I know. When you say Big Ten threat, I wouldn't say they're going to be top 5 in the conference.
Okay.
But they can knock some teams off. Teams have to take them seriously now.
Okay.
I mean, if you're a Michigan and Ohio State, or if you're with Washington even, I mean, this is going to be a team that you're like, okay, they can play. They've got playmakers. Their defense is strong. And we're still looking. They're trying to find that hitch in Indiana. From what we've seen so far, it's the end of the first half on defense is when they can build momentum. But we haven't seen anybody come out of halftime and capitalize on the momentum they already have. So if anything, it's going to be with those teams to play in the second half to see if they can knock Indiana off. Because Indiana's offense's rhythm, it really doesn't seem like has been messed with at all. So it's going to come down to who can play defense the best and who can come out of halftime the best against this Indiana team. But I would say they're going to definitely be a threat in an upset type of way. It's not going to be they're going to threat the top end of the conference by, hey, maybe they're going to be 10-2 by the end of the year. I don't think they're not there yet. They could be. The way Signetti coaches, he could get this team there in a few years for sure.
So do you think Maryland could be that team, their next game, that finds that little wrinkle in Signetti's plans?
They could. Well, with how Billy Edwards and Ty Felton's connection is going, Felton's leading the conference in passing yards, or Edwards is leading in passing yards. Felton's leading in receiving yards and receptions by like 10 or 15 catches. It's nuts. I think, if anything, it's going to be that offense that can keep it going in the second half. It's going to test Indiana's defense. Or even their defense maybe can throw Indiana off. It's a Big Ten defense. It's got endless talent. It held Michigan State. Granted, they lost, but it held Michigan State for most of the game. It's just the secondary is questionable. So if Indiana's pass game is off and they have to revert to a run game, Rutgers can stop that run game. So maybe they find something in the offense, or maybe it's that offense that can finally break Indiana's defense for more than 1 or 2 drives in the second quarter.
So you see it being a close game.
For sure.
It will be tight. Okay.
For sure.
So what's the final score of that game?
I've got 27-24. I
Okay.
think it's
IU
definitely
win?
going to be close. I've got IU winning because they're at home. They've got momentum coming in. Big Ten Network's going to be here with the whole pregame shenanigans that they like to do.
It'll be a big game.
I'm expecting a crowd for once that's actually going to stay.
But of course it's raining that day, most likely. Right? So, I mean,
It's
that plays back
Midwesterners,
there.
though. It's Midwesterners. They might stick it out.
We're used to it.
Some of them are.
Okay, some of them. Well, we will see that game. We'll always appreciate it. Breaking down the Big Ten. Now we're going to send it right over to Ryan and Ava, where they're going to show you what Maryland's looking like in IU.
All right, thanks, Liv. That was a great segment. I love how we're incorporating some Big Ten into the IU-only show. That's awesome. But now my guest at this time, Ava Wegenke, from the Hoosier Network Football Beat. How you doing?
Thank you, Ryan. I'm so excited to be here.
Fellow Michigander?
Yes.
Absolutely. All right, the first competent opponent of the season. First 4 weeks have flown by. What is your take on this Hoosier team so far?
I think that they're legit. I do. I think that they're legit, and I think that they're super fun to watch. We've never seen, well, I shouldn't say never. We haven't seen this type of competitiveness and attack and play and grit from them in a really, really long time. So I think as a fan and just everything, it's so rewarding and it's fun to watch them for once.
Competitiveness, grit, the great adjectives. Wow. So Maryland comes in 3-1. You know, before, I don't know how many of the viewers have kept up with Maryland, but before the season started, you lose your all-time leading passer, Talia Tungavaloa, to the NFL. Bunch of guys go to the NFL. Some go to the transfer portal. On defense, you have no identity. You do have great receivers, which we will get into later, but the quarterback, it's going to be Billy Edwards. It has been Billy Edwards. It could have been MJ Morris, the transfer from NC State. Before this season, Billy Edwards was a, albeit tush-push merchant. He had 3 touchdowns against Michigan, just tush-pushes, was not really effective with his arm until the season started. As Will said, he leads the conference in passing yards, and you have the amazing receivers, Ty Felton, Caden Prather. What kind of threat does this team pose to Indiana in their defense?
Well, you mentioned Ty Felton, right? And I think that he is going to be one of their biggest threats. I mean, I was watching their head coach's press conference from yesterday, and he described Felton as the best thing since sliced bread. He really loves him and what he does, and he feels like his development, especially this season, has been insane. Just the way he was last season to this season, there's been huge developments. And so I think we're going to get a lot of Ty Felton, and it's going to take a lot of Indiana to kind of defend against him, where I think that's where we're going to see a lot of D'Angelo Pons this weekend. I think Pons is going to get that job. And that's going, I mean, yeah, you got Edwards, and their connection is great, but I think Ty Felton is going to be someone to watch.
Are you more confident in the Hoosiers' ability to stop the pass or stop the run? Because we haven't even mentioned Roman Hemby yet.
Yeah.
He's had, 2,500 all-purpose yards in his 3-year or 4-year career, 22 touchdowns in his career. Stopping the run, stopping the pass, what are the Hoosiers going to have more trouble with?
Stopping the pass. I think that the pass game is Maryland's strongest suit. They're still figuring out their run game. I mean, you can see it on the stats. You watch them play. That run game for them is still iffy. They've still got stuff to work through, and I think part of that is just because they're a younger team. They lost a lot of guys. They're still figuring that stuff out. So I think that pass game is where Indiana is going to really have to focus up.
Right, and if there is one player that could win this game on defense, try to steer away from D'Angelo Pons, another, maybe defensive secondary or any defensive player that could win this game for Indiana.
I mean, you got Aiden Fisher. Right. Aiden Fisher has just been an absolute beast every single week. He's so fun to watch. He just goes for it. He goes for it. He has a lot of, I'm going to use that word grit again. He's got a lot of grit. And I also think Sean Ashbury, I've really liked watching him as well. So I think one of those two for sure.
I mean, all these JMU transfers, I mean, Ashbury, Fisher, Kamara, I mean, they got that grit. And we love to talk about grit because, you know, go Lions. But I need a prediction from you real quick before we get you out of here. Go ahead.
27-20.
Okay.
27-20. I think that we're going to see Maryland make at least 1 or 2 scoring possessions in the first half. Definitely right before that halftime. That's kind of been the theme. I think if they score again, it's going to be coming out of that third quarter. But I don't know. I see Indiana taking this one 27-20.
Real quick, offense. Who is going to win this game for the Hoosiers? Is it going to be a receiver or a back? Because we know Curtis Rourke is going to get this receiver the ball. Which receiver or back is going to win this game? Who will we be talking about who will you be talking about on Pack the Rock next week?
I will be talking about Justice Ellison. Justice Ellison, I can't get enough. He is so fun to watch. That kid, when he goes out on the field, he knows his job. He's running his route. He's doing what needs to be done. It's going to be Justice.
And the best part of it all is that I'm asking you which player will make a splash. That is a very great problem to have.
It is, Ryan. It really is.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We will be back. Liv and I will be back to wrap up the show.
We are back, and we're going to close it out with our Maryland predictions. I know you just talked about it with Ava, Ryan. The Terrapins are now 3-1, and they're looking for their next win. Where do you see this game playing out, and in favor of who?
Well, quick on Maryland. This team could easily be 4-0. Just a couple turnovers and just bad play against Michigan State is keeping them from being undefeated. And I think they would also be talked about being ranked if they were 4-0. But on the team of the Terps, I think this team is dangerous. I mean, not in the national, not in the national scheme. Like this team will not be favored for an at-large playoff bid, but to a team that is looking to, find their footing in their conference, this is a bad matchup for Indiana. And I think, this offense, as we talked about earlier in the intro, we don't have a weak point yet for the Hoosiers. They do not have a weak point. And I think that Maryland will exploit that because they have dynamic playmakers. And I think that this will be a close game. This game, I would not be surprised if this was no less than a one-score game through all 60 minutes. I do think Indiana wins, and I think the line is at 6.5 right now. I think Indiana will not cover. So I think Maryland will cover the 6.5, but I think Indiana will win. Score, I'll do 31-27.
Okay, that's not bad. So when you look at that, do you think it comes down to the defense that plays better or the QB that does better?
Yeah, I think the offense will certainly have their share. Okay. Maryland lost a lot when it comes to the NFL draft, transfer portal. They still have great players, don't get me wrong, especially on defense. But, I mean, we have no reason to believe that Curtis Rourke will be slowing down.
Yeah. Well, this Saturday, September 28th, noon kickoff, Maryland and IU. IU will be hosting their Big Ten home opener for the season. I have 35-31, IU winning. We'll see you next week for more Big Ten play.